Okay, we're going to do a couple of the problems, or one of the problem that we did in class. So if you wanted to go back over it slowly, you can. Please don't get ahead of me. I've got this all written out for myself. What I want you to have is a blank sheet of paper right now. Okay, so the first thing that I want you to do is fill out this part right here. So the first step is to what I call not lose units. So you're going to write down beginning inventory started, a total, transferred out ending inventory, and a total, and then beginning inventory started and completed and ending inventory. So pause the tape if you have to, write those down. And now I'm going to read this. So we have specialty chemicals in 3 processes. All materials are introduced in the distilling department. The materials pass through the reaction and filling department, emerging as finished chemicals. The balance in the work in process account on January 1st. So this is beginning inventory. So in the filling department, and this over here we're dealing with units. We're going to deal with dollars in just a second. But I have 3,400 that were 60% complete. However, what we need to do is ask ourselves, how much of the materials did we add? And all the materials come from the prior department. So they've already come from the prior department since they're sitting in work in process in the filling department. So this is only related to the labor and overhead. I'm also going to write some dollars down here, 32,572, and conversion costs, which are labor and overhead, is 79.56. So I have the $40,528 of costs. So this is all this line is all beginning inventory. When I show you the solution in just a second, you're going to see they don't do this. I simply do it because I'd like to do it all at one time so I don't lose my dollars, I don't lose my costs. And then notice I started in the filling department. First I transferred from the reaction department 52,300 units, so that's 52,300. And I also added costs, and I added costs of $496,850, and I added conversion costs of $101,560 and $95,166, because conversion costs are labor and overhead. So right now I have total cost to not lose is $73,404. That's going to be a check figure, and this is going to be a check figure. So I don't want to lose any dollars. I don't want to lose any units. I have to figure out what happened to them. So there's only 2 places units can come from. They either were already there or I started them. And there's only 2 places that units can go to. They were either completed and transferred out, or they weren't completed and they're still here. So then I go ahead and read. During January, 53,000 units were completed. So completed is the same thing as transferred out, so I put that there. Okay, now a little thing about this problem, all these yellow boxes right here, they have to be the same, and this is my check figure. So when I'm done, these are always going to equal 55.7 because my units have to go someplace. Now sometimes they don't give you ending inventory. In this case they do. They say they're 2,700, 30% completed. But notice that this has to equal 55.7, so if I get that to equal 55.7, I know this is 55.7, so I can back into that. All right, and then what happens is the whole purpose of this was to fill this out quickly. All right, so my beginning inventory becomes my beginning inventory, the same number. My ending inventory is the same number as my ending inventory. But notice these were started, but I don't know if they were completed or not. And these were completed, but I don't know if they were started or not. So there's only 3 stages of inventory. There's some inventory that what I finished, it's beginning inventory. There's some inventory that I started and finished, and there's some inventory that I started but didn't finish. And we'll talk about this a little bit in class. But think about that. If you were going to work on your homework and you walked in and you'd started it yesterday, you finish some, then you start and finish some, and then you start some but you don't finish. So there's 3 stages of inventory. All right, so notice how these all agree. This is your first step. Our first step is don't lose units, okay? So here's my check figures, and this is the important part. So I'm going to bring up the solution here. And I want to show you a couple different things guess this will work, about the solution. Notice they only have this top part right here. Okay? They don't do this. And that's fine. You don't have to do this. I do it because figuring out this 49.6 is so simple if you take 2 seconds to do this one, and ending inventory starts down here. Another thing they do is they subtotal after this number. So if you want to set up your spreadsheet to subtotal because your online homework asks for it, go ahead. I would suggest you go ahead and do a spreadsheet even for your online homework, simply because it'll make it a lot quicker. Okay, but anyway, so 3,400 plus 49.6, they subtotal at 53, then they add the 27 to get 55.7. I don't subtotal it, okay? We'll work on these in just a second. Okay, so now we know that our beginning inventory was 3,400 units, but now I have to say, okay, how many of those did I add? I call it direct materials to, but in this case, since they're transferred in from another department, how many of those were transferred in this period? And the answer is I added 0 materials to it because they were already started and they transfer in at the beginning of the period. So since they were 60% done, all of the materials are there, or all of the items are already there. So this is 0. So in this one, I'm going to take the 3,400 times 0. And the cost that I had to add for bringing them in is 0. It's already there. It's already buried right up here in this cost, right here. Okay? Then, what percent of them did I have to finish as far as conversion costs? Well, if they were 60% done when you walked in the door, they're now 40%. You need 40% to finish. So I have 1,360. And again, this number is simply 3,400 times 40%. So you can see 3,400, 0, 1,360. Same as their answer. If you started something and finished something, it's 100% done. Okay? Again, if you start a race and you finish a race, you did 100% of the race. So that one's the easy line. And then ending inventory, I asked myself, how many of them came in this period, or how many of them, in most cases, did I add materials to? And I always add materials at the beginning of the process. Not always, but in this problem I do. And in fact, in this book, you always add materials at the beginning. So that's 100%, and they're 30% done. So I did that work this period. Please don't get these flipped. If I walked in the room and it was 60% done, I did 40% of the work. And then I started and finished these. So I did 100% of the work. Then I started these and got 30% done and left. So this period, I did 30%. So this period, I finished these, started and finished these, and started these. Okay? So again, this has got to be the opposite because I did the other half. This has got to be the part I did. All right, so notice my equivalent units now are 55.7, 55.7, 52.3, 52.3, 51.770, 51.770. It agrees. All I did was put the percent columns. They put them as little asterisks down here. So notice they did 1 minus 60%, which is 40%. Okay, so again, same thing. So I'm going to pause this. Okay, so let's go through the steps. Step 1. Can't get this thing to roll up. Step 1. Don't lose your units. Figure out your units. Step 2, figure out your equivalent units. Step 3, we're going to figure out your cost per equivalent unit. Now remember, I wrote my costs up here. The solution doesn't write the costs up there, but I do. Okay, and that's just simply so I have it on my spreadsheet and I can use it. So basically notice that in my units, I do not include what I did last month. And last month, I brought them in, 100% of them. I brought them all 3,400 in, so this is 0. And I did 60% of the work on them. So this period, I didn't bring any of these in, and I did the other 40% of the work. So in other words, I do not include the units I worked on them last period. So I do not include the costs that I did last period. So notice this line I call cost this period. So cost this period is simply this number right up there. Okay, if you didn't do this up here, then you're going to have to go to the case and find it. And my equivalent units, my conversion costs that I did this period are simply this right there. Okay, so I take my total cost this period divided by my total units this period. So this 53 comes down here, this 51,770 comes down here, and I take my cost of 486,850 divided by my units, and I get 950, and I take my 196 divided by 51,770 to get my 380. So you can notice they get 950 and 380. Okay, let me pause it. Okay, so now let's focus on this part of the solution right here. This part of the solution, which again on your online homework, if they do it that way, that's how you want to do it. But I've already done it. 40, 528, 693, 576 are these totals right up here. 40, 528, 693, 576. They don't necessarily break them out into conversion costs. I do, because in the spreadsheet then I can just have this cell pull down to this cell. And if you notice, all my numbers down here have automatically filled in, but I'm going to go through on how we get them. Okay, so what we have is then we have to assign the cost. So step 1, figure out the units right there. Step 2, figure out your equivalent units. Step 3, figure out your cost per unit. Step 4, assign the costs. So notice what I have is I have 3 stages of inventory. Beginning inventory, started and completed, and ending inventory. However, this inventory technically has 2 stages. What I did last period and what I did this period. So my beginning inventory is always going to have 2 lines. The first line is going to be what I did this last period. The second line is what I did this period. So my beginning inventory is what I did last period. I simply pull from these up there. So this 352 comes down here, and this 7956 comes down here. So for a total of 40,528. Notice they don't break them out. They just put the 40,528 right there. I don't care what you do. Again, I simply just line them up because it's quicker to line them up, and bring them down because it's quicker to bring them down. Okay, that way I do everything all the same. Okay, and then notice these are in units. Those 3 numbers right there in units, and these 3 numbers right there are in units. Okay, so what I need to do is convert my units to costs by taking them times the cost per unit. So I'm going to take 0 times 950. So 0 times 950 is 0. I'm going to take 49,600 times 950 is 41,200. Okay, again, I'm converting this to costs. And then my ending inventory, notice it's not right underneath it, it's down here, but we'll come back to that in a second, is the 2,700 times 950. So my costs for my direct materials are what I did last period for beginning inventory, what I did this period for beginning inventory, which is, and my last period is the 32. This period is 0 times 950. What I started and completed is 49,600 times 950, and my ending inventory is 2,700 times 950. I do exactly the same for conversion costs. My beginning inventory, what I did last period, is there. Then I finish my beginning inventory, which is 1,360 times my 380. And then I do the same for started and completed. Okay, and then I do the same thing for my ending inventory. Leave a space for your ending inventory right there. And the reason that I'm going to separate it out is because notice up here, there's only 2 places where costs can come from. They were already there, so this is units, this is costs. This is units, this is costs. What I want to do is assign costs to transferred out and ending inventory. So I'm going to split them up a little bit differently. So what I need to do now is subtotal for these 5,300 units that were transferred out. And my inventory that's transferred out is all of the stuff I've finished. So everything I've finished is my beginning inventory and my starting completed. So suddenly now they're subtotaling up here after this 49.6 might be useful to you if that helps you, because these are transferred out, these are transferred out, but these are not transferred out. So I want to total up the cost for beginning inventory, which some part of it's up here and some part of it's a combination of this, and started and completed, which is there and there. So 3 lines transferred out, beginning inventory already there, beginning inventory finish it, started and completed. So I have 705,376. So let's compare it to what they have. They do the 40,528 just in one number. Again, this is the only number I care about, guys, right here. There's my 0 and 5168, 0 and 5168, my 471,200, my 188,400 for a total of 659, and the total, that's important right there, the 705,366. So I kind of wish they would have made a big double underline underneath that, because that's the important one. Okay, then my ending inventory, I just add across. Notice they have 28,728, and I do too. Now remember I said a check figure. This 374,104 and this, I'm sorry, 734,104 and this 734,104 better be the same number. Okay? Because I don't want to lose units. Where'd they come from? Units. Where'd they come from? Costs. Where'd they go? Units. Where'd they go? Costs. So the cost of these 53,000 is 705,376, and the cost of the 2,700 ending inventory is 28,728. Okay, so an important thing is next period, this becomes beginning inventory. So next period, this number would be 27 units, 2,700 units, 30% done, total cost of 28,728, materials cost of 25,650, conversion cost of 3,078. So 2 other things I want to do is I want to make a T account of, let's say, WIP. Okay, this isn't going to come out really great because, of course, first of all, I can't spell. Okay, so this is going to be my debit side and this is going to be my credit side. So I don't necessarily have my great little lines here, but anyway, we're going to do that. So WIP started out the semester, and T accounts only have costs in it. But WIP started out the semester, started out the month with $40,528 worth of costs. WIP's an inventory, so it's got a debit balance. I added to it $693,576 of costs. So you can see if I added that up, I've got $734,104 worth of costs. Okay, so I'm going to delete that now. And then I transferred out $705,376. So now if I did my balance in WIP, I've got my 2 debits minus what's transferred out. And watch this. My ending inventory is 28,728. So what's my journal entry for this whole process of however long it took you? This whole process is to get 1 journal entry. I need to move the 75,376 out of WIP and into finished goods. And we're done.